Okay, we have a pretty interesting game here, one that I actually think demonstrates a lot of late game tactics and control over the game ends pretty well. And isn't really a blowout one way or the other, so tend to be the most interesting game. So it's a game between me and Milestone Party, who's a 2000 rated, 2050 rated player, and I think it kind of demonstrates a lot of the core elements of keeping control of the game, trying to play tactically in the end game, and play to the advantage that you have. So let's get started. And IC versus UNMI here. Pretty weak preludes. And a pretty weak hand overall. You have some card draw. A couple of steel targets. But there's not a lot to like here. A little bit of development, protected halves, generally decent card to have, especially in the mid game. I don't think a lot to think about here. IO Research Outpost isn't doing very much for this hand. Science not needed, titanium production. We do have imported nitrogen as a target, but not much else. Turbines, generally favorable for IC starting with so much steel, and you could consider going UNMI here. You do have the TR Gen 1, will eventually have something going on every game where you end up with terraforming. And I don't think it's the strangest decision, but here IC's generically stronger core gives you a little bit more ability to play if we find a good engine setup. And with card draw in our hand, it can be good to have that extra cash that we get by playing this way. Go ahead and lock this in. Obviously hoping to take the card ocean with turbines here to get us going. All right. See what our opponent has. Nitrogen shipment. Also fairly weak prelude, but does give him a ground game going. Experimental forest on the card. Noctis farming. Greenhouses as the draws. So not great draws for our opponent either, which is helpful. Get ours going here. Also not very helpful draws here. TG and ACF don't really go as his hand. We'll keep our eyes up for microbes here. We have nitrogen and ECF. ECF can be pretty decent, especially at 13 cost. If we find cycrophiles, decomposers, one of the TR bumpers and GHG bacteria, or regolitheters. But yeah, TG is not what we're doing in this game. And we were kind of hoping to find something to drop our steel into to get us going, which we failed to find here as well. taking some time, so probably a card draw coming, yep. Alright, well, turn 1 card draw. It's not super scary, but certainly not what we were hoping to be up against. Give some more chances, and we're going to need some time to figure out how our hand evolves here. Mine area, very strong play. Presumably he found that off of the draw, otherwise he would have played it earlier. Which is quite a nice find for him. Survey, so digging for more cards here. Not a biggest fan of playing these early, personally. I think survey on Gen 1 it's usually pretty weak. You wanna find some time to develop synergy with these cards. An early Mars U, Olympus Conference. It's an easy Ecozone choice here, obviously. Mars U, Olympus Conference, Media Group. These cards can give us quite discounts on Martian Survey, make it much better. We don't have any prod if you're Milestone party here, so drawing a ton of cards is a little bit risky. It slows you down quite a bit. So this is an interesting pack. The best card here for us is Fusion Power by far. We have Deep Well Heating in hand, and we can drop Fusion Power immediately, which is a really nice play. But Geothermal is better for our opponent. And he may pick Fusion Power, which sends us back birds, which isn't the worst here with fairly limited heat in the game. But I think this is a good example. Fusion Power is best for us, but sometimes, but it's not very good for our opponent. And so we want to take the card that's good for both of us, which is Geothermal Power here. Now with our Glut of Steel, we're definitely going to develop the power and carbonate. We obviously don't play Deep Well, as we'd like to grab the heat bonus ourselves, and taking it early puts us in range of it. It looks like a acquired company. I wasn't paying attention. It's odd to see photosynthesis come down there with no follow-up. Makes me think that he has science payoff in hand. I think easy SF Memorial here helps us develop our steel. We'll take Mineral Deposit. It's best card here. Microbes doesn't look very strong for him. Gotta lean towards hackers. He played this photosynthesis naked, which did make me think of AI. And if he has AI, he might play hackers, whereas I don't think he's ever playing shuttles. Yeah, the first two are good for us. We don't have a lot going on here. Certainly not feeling very confident about the game at the moment. Time to develop our card draw here. You could have done this the prior generation, but usually you want to develop your production before you start drawing cards. We're pretty poor here. It's I value the early cash a little bit more. Same reason why I didn't like the Martian Survey play for him Gen 1. It's another gen where we don't have a lot planned out for ourselves. Okay, so he has development center. So 2-card draw for him. Wave power is not it. Opponent with 2-card draw. We have -1 production. Nothing good in hand. Not feeling good. Lycan, which feels a little slow for him with his limited cash situation. Could be a signal of NRA in his hand, so just want to keep in mind that he's playing some marginal plant tags here. Equally, I mean, he has the 1 prod from the starter. So this is, not his first production, which makes it a little bit better. So it's not guaranteed that he has NRA. All right, easy research. Send in plant tag to him, so let's see what he does. Plant tag with Archaebacteria, so that should give us some information. Flooding, helpful for us. I see we have the rebate on events, can help us turn on some plant tags if we find them. All right, so he took Archaebacteria over Adapted Lichen, which means he's not desperate for NRA here. He either has it locked up or not. Adapted Lichen could be fine here. I mean, we honestly have nothing to do, so buying it, I think, is reasonable. In case we don't find anything, we can get some plants rolling, develop habs. Archaebacteria in Gen 4, Adapted Lichen Gen 4 is not really a great play that I'd recommend, but you have to start doing something. You can't just keep passing 4 gens in. And with habs, it's a little bit less problematic than it would normally be. But we're quite behind here. We need to hope that our card draw delivers us something that gets us started here. And here we have Regolith Theaters, which I think I almost forgot that I have ECF in my hand. It's a little late coming down Gen 4, but we don't have any plant tags here. I mean, we don't have any plant tags. Chances are high that our opponent has several of them, especially since he's been drawing a lot of cards. He's already got 2 plant prod. We just passed him Archaebacteria, so he's probably going up to 3. We need to compete on the O2 track. We're too poor to standard here. We don't have enough heat here to end on our own. We won't be standarding here. Regolith looks pretty interesting. It gives us something to do to science tag, and ECF can play on it. Ideally, we'd find something a little bit better, so I think playing research here is pretty decent. Not, again, what we want to find with Preds and Power Grid. But now we do have 2 late game point scorers in Preds and Birds, so once the O2 track gets done, we're going to be scoring fairly well passively. So that just, doubles our conviction on ECF Regolith, which we develop here. Hopefully this gives us quite a bit of the O2 track, gets our Preds and Birds online, hopefully gets us the heat bonus, cuts into our opponent's scoring on the board with his plant production, and maybe this science tag that we developed will become relevant. Just saw the Archaebacteria come into play. So opponent is at 3 plant production. We don't take the heat bump here because we want to take it ourselves. Could play Deep Well into it, which is not unreasonable here. But I think at the moment I'm looking for something a little bit stronger to do with my steel. Okay, so easy kelp farming. Expect, based on the way our opponent's been playing with the science, that he's going to take gene repair. But shuttles could be good for him as well if he has space discounts. Yeah, power plant, the only relevant card in this pack. Okay, so he did take gene repair. We cut shuttles here. Space discounts be quite good for him if he can stack them. With all of his card draw, quite likely that he can find quantum, mass, space station shuttles and start stacking space discounts and end up in a position where he can play all the space tags very cheaply. He's quite poor for having 2 card draw, which is our saving grace right now. We have a bit more cash banked up and have better production at the moment with the heat and the energy flowing in, whereas he's spending that on card draw. We do have 1 card draw. We're a little bit ahead on builder. Likely our opponent takes planner this gen. So there's nothing we can do about that. Yep. And you could threaten planner here by using ECF and force him to fund it, but I think he's always going to fund it this generation, so I don't see a lot of point. Next we'll take our heat bumps. He'll take planner. We're going to pick a builder here. It looks like he has a pretty easy gardener. Our hand is still really bad. And it's Gen 5, so we're running out of time to find good things to do. I mean, we have a few nice pieces in our hand, but without any planned production, weak cash production, no terraforming cards, only 1 card draw, no science payoffs. You know, certainly feeling like we're behind on most of the awards here. Likely only getting 1 milestone. This feels very unlikely to become a win. Yeah, now our opponent has AI Central, which, again, the only saving grace we have here is that he is very poor. But we do not have many threats coming. Develops Search for Life, which means he has a science payoff, as we might have expected. Nice thing about the ECF Regolith combo is, despite having far fewer card draw and far fewer cards in our hand for the rest of the game, we're not going to get completely outstalled, which usually becomes very relevant in games like this. So now he has 16 cards and 7 cash. So he can't fund planner. Just a sequencing mistake by our opponent here. He's probably realizing it right now. That he can no longer fund planner unless he has an ability to draw here. Which he could. Attack demonstration. But it's still a strange order, even if he has that. Nothing good for us to do, and on the off chance he doesn't have planner here and just made the mistake, we'll pass with our ability to take planner next gen. We just got heat trappered, I think. I don't think I was paying attention for this part of the game. I didn't even notice that I got heat trappered. That is very painful. Earth Office is fantastic for our opponent, but it's not very good for us. And Space Elevator is kind of exactly what we need. So if our opponent's going to get a good card, we'll take the good card. I think we just need to get something going here, otherwise we'll have no chance. So while Earth Office is quite good for him, these all are terrible. Again, don't want to stack up space discounts. He just developed mass, so we take Space Station for sure. He's probably regretting not taking shuttles over Gene Repair. I think Gene Repair, not a very good card for him. Shuttles stacking with Space Station could be very powerful for him. So I think he should have taken shuttles over Gene Repair prior generation. And the other reason to take Earth Office here is we get 2 good cards with Plantation coming back. Plantation will help us get us the bonus here, and we'll get Ecozone online, which is great for us. So very good draft pack, and we steal Planner. Yeah, open with Planner here. Sponsored is obviously not a buy. I think there's several ideas here. Obviously we want to get Space Elevator online. At some point, it's just making a check, I think, to make sure that I don't have any space to play, but I don't. At some point, we'll want to get Ecozone online, so we're going to want to play a little misplay here, which is, I think I probably thought that was the first action, but obviously you shouldn't float the 4 steel, not knowing where Sabotage is. But at some point we're going to want to get the Plantation in play, probably to take the heat bonus. So ideally we're going to do something like play Plantation, use Regolith Eaters. So next generation, when that heat bonus at 8% O2 is up on the line, we're going to want to load Regolith early in the generation and then go Plantation into Regolith. So we're 7 on 5 on Builder, which means we probably need to take it this gen. He has 18 cards. Unfortunately, we have a pretty natural line with Deep Well Heating, which at the moment still accords with what we'd like to do, which is keep pushing the tempo. Of course, with Heat Trappers last generation, our ability to cap out heat here is more limited than it was. Slightly changing the game plan here. As the Earth Office. Very unfortunate to have to pass that to him. It could certainly pay dividends for him, especially if he has Cartel, Miranda. But also, as Terractor makes basically every Earth tag playable. Colonizer Training Camp is an odd play for him. I know he wants the Threatened Builder, but it's pretty expensive for what it does. And he may well want to stay in this generation a little bit longer so as to prompt me to fund Builder here. Which of course I may not, from his perspective, I may not have Builder at all, so he's probably trying to figure out whether he wants to play what is probably a marginal building tag in his hand, so as to get up to 7 and take it to open. He has more stalls than we do, so since he's drawing with AI Central, it's usually going to be the case that he'll outstall us. But fortunately, we're setting up quite a nice action suite with Space Elevator, ECF, Regula Theaters, and our card draw, which will keep us pretty deep into generations despite having much fewer cards in our hand than he ever will have. So I think the plan here, might as well play Flooding. We're going to play next gen anyways. Flooding also advances us towards Kelp farming in our hand, so it's just an obvious play. And Flooding's going to come out in the middle of the board, and since we're unrestricted on where to place tiles, Plantation is ideally going to go next to the ocean that we play. So I think the line here is something like Flooding, Protected Halves. See if you can get him to play a bad building tag. Probably just checking the math. Making sure that if we get sabotaged, we'll be fine. But he would eat his sabotage earlier in the gen against our steal, so he doesn't have it. And this is just purely forcing him to take a couple stalls, maybe play a bad building tag, thinking that we don't have it. We're always playing Flooding, might as well get the cash brought out of it. We're always going to play Habs. And also, Comet's interesting too. Kind of surprised that he played Comet here. Doesn't seem to do much for him. Not sure if he just lacked a stall action here. But now we're sort of forced to go Depot into Builder. Maybe we'll find out in a few minutes why he did Comet. Maybe he thought he could kill our plants. Forgot about Protected Halves. But, you know, kind of looks like a slightly strange play. It's very good for us, provided that he can't take the center of the board, because we'll get 4 cash back with Plantation. It's still not looking like a very good situation. He's got the final milestone here. We're not particularly well positioned on any awards. And our hand is not great. This is, we have to take Antigraph here. He's got 7 science tags and this bails him out a lot, but we would love to have Ice Asteroid. Ice Asteroid's great for Kelp. We can hope that he plays it. Hopefully soon. It's pretty close between Solar Wind and Probe, but I think since he has all the power he needs, we'll take the point. You could consider keeping Probe here now that we have Antigraph. Easy fish. So now the big question is, do you keep Antigrav? We have no more science in our hand. We only have 3 tags in play. Trans-Neptune Probe is basically 9 for a point. We have no science synergy, no payoffs. And at the moment it kind of looks like we have some pretty expensive plays. We want to get Kelp down, we want to get Capital down. We're going to take the bonus this gen. We have Plantation, Ecozone. There's a lot to do here. And I don't think that it makes a lot of sense to keep it. he's going to convert to open. Our play will obviously be to load up Regolith, draw a card, get Plantation down for the heat bonus, hopefully. It's pretty difficult for him to take it from us with how limited his cash is. Small Animals is a good find. And we'll load up Regolith. Obviously teeing up Plantation Regolith, which we'll go ahead and play now. The challenge for him in this really heavy card draw, no global discount situation is you have very little money in the mid game, and you have it's kind of awkward sequencing where you don't really want to let me get 3 milestones here, but you'd really rather not fund. In fact, the 8 cash here arguably can generate more than 5 points for him over the course of the game. I like Ecozone down here. We already have access to the east, so we'll cut off his walk, his ocean walk along the south. Pick up 2 plants, allows us to go ocean conversion for 4 cashback next gen. We're always playing Ecozone. Our choices are really go to the right of our greenery, get the 2 cash back, but I think 2 plants almost as valuable as 2 cash here, and gives us access to a new part of the map and blocks him from going that direction, so seems better. He's probably starting to think about funding Scientist, given he has so many more cards than we do. There's that gene repair he kept over shuttles. Still looks pretty weak here. I'm playing it just for 2 cash production and 2 points. The Small Animal is going to be quite strong here. This is a very good example of how strong this card can be. As this is, at least going 10 generations, but could go as long as 12. This will be by itself a 2 to 3 point card. Plus, it's going to kill about a greenery's worth of plants from our opponent. So, somewhere around a 4 point card for 9 cash. Plus, it gives us an Ecozone and a stall action. Our near-term priorities here are get Kelp farming in play and get capital in play on the south. Ideally, we get max points out of that. His sell is going to be for a Scientist, yeah. Not a lot left to do. Cartel quite good for him, so it costs 5 cash for 4 production. The Cartel's not very good for us, so we take Open City. None of this is very good. Just gonna cut windmills. Again, our game not coming together so great. But we continue to ride the wave of how poor our opponent is. I think as the time goes on in this game, it's going to be more and more of just completing the passive actions in a logical fashion, so I'll talk a little bit less about that as I go through, but what you should start to get a feel for as we reach into the end game here is when can a player end the game, and how cheaply can that player end the game? And sussing this out and playing around it becomes the most important aspect of these really tight games like this one. As our opponent's going to have a lot more cards and is probably going to be acting last every time, you have to be cognizant of the fact that there is a lot that a player can do all in one sequence if you pass and they get an uninterrupted chain of events. The other problem is that we haven't seen many space events here. So cards like GIA, we know he has Ice Asteroid, which we passed him. Cards like Demos, cards like Big Asteroid, Lava Flows, all of which can accelerate the game and don't cost that much money, are likely in his hand. At this point we've seen, there's 85 cards left in the deck, so we've seen somewhere around almost two-thirds of the deck. So if you haven't seen a card, it's a decent chance that your opponent has seen it, and you have to play as though they have these options. And so what that means for us is we want to be really careful with using our heat for two reasons. One, as we use our heat, we narrow down the awards that we can be competitive in. So at the moment, the only awards that we have competition in are minor, which is not very attractive. It's only 3 production. Minor is also doubly unattractive when you know you're going to be you're not going to be the last to act, because the person who's last to act gets to use all their minerals or steal minor with perfect information, whereas the person who's not last to act has to stow up their minerals or use them and give up minor. So it's a lot more costly to be the first to pass when minor's funded. So minor's not a good fund for us. Thermalist is one where we want to prevent it from being easy for our opponent to fund it. Equally, because our lead is only 6 points here, we have to be really careful that at any given point he can't, after we pass, end the game cheaply. And so we want to keep it expensive for him to end if we're going to pass. The other side of that is we want to maximize the gap in scoring between us and our opponent every time before we pass. And that's going to become increasingly important as this game stretches here. Every time we pass, the opponent probably has the power to end the game if he really wants to. And so we have to decide whether we're going to end the game or we're going to play as though it goes another generation. If we play as though it goes another generation, we can't play like we normally do. Normally you'd want to play production cards, scaling cards, things that pay off as the game stretches. But when you're in this position and your opponent can end the game, you instead have to start playing things that score points rather than give you scaling, so that you keep your lead wide enough. So it's interesting draft pack, so I'll transition to that. Earthcat, obviously we can't give to our opponent with so many cards. It's very surprising to see Mars University come back here. I think the only things that this can really be are Demos, GIA, maybe insects, maybe nitrogen-rich asteroid. But I am surprised to see him pass this card to us. Also somewhat surprised to see Convoy from Europa come back here. But this is going to be quite a solid generation for us. Getting Earthcat online means that we can continue to scale into the end game. And another thing, right on my prior topic here, which is I think a lot of people, they see they're up against 4 card draw like we are here, and they think I need the game to be over, otherwise I can't win. He's gonna be scaling better. But the thing you have to keep in mind is we're not scaling that badly here. Hopefully by this gen, if not by next gen, we're gonna have birds online. We have small animals. We have the regolith ECF combo. So we're scoring passively pretty well here. And he's pretty poor. So our scoring's not that much worse than he is. The passive scoring he has is physics and access to more cards. More cards means, he's probably going to score more efficiently than us with his cash. But his cash is more limited than ours. And as the O2 caps here, there's going to be fewer and fewer ways to score, especially since we have Eco Zone. And so our opponent's options are actually dwindling as time goes on. And so we can actually afford to play a long game here. And you're going to start to see me convert to that style. As soon as we got this draft, our options opened up quite a bit. Now we have Mars U, which means we can potentially draw at least 4 or 5 more cards if we get lucky here. We have Earth Cat in play, which means we have substantially more money than our opponent does. We don't have access to as many cards. We have good passive scoring. We have Eco Zone, which is good scaling scoring. And we have a pretty, decent set of cards to play. Plus, with the O2 capping here, using our ECF regolith combo, there just aren't going to be that many ways to score. So we can continue to think about this, right? Do we want to play for game ends, which we don't have a lot of influence over cheaply? Or do we just want to keep developing naturally? And for now, you'll see I'm just going with the natural development. And remember, if you just play naturally, you're going to keep your lead the biggest. If I right now tried to force an ending, I'm not going to score very well. Standarding asteroids, standarding oceans. And since I only lead by 4 points, it's not really an option. So we want to keep playing cards here that allow us to keep the game going. So Earth Cat, Mars U, these are cards that help us stretch into the long game and still keep scoring. So here our opponent plays Noctis Farming, which is a bit of a weird one. Telegraphs to you that he's going to try to take some of the O2 going into this final generation, which makes sense. He doesn't want us to take it with the ECF combo. And so we'd really like to get birds online this gen. He only has 1 plant production right now, but whatever he plays to take the O2 might give him that plant production. Given he has 1, I think that means he has the livestock in play, which I didn't comment on, but obviously livestock makes Preds viable. And Preds is online here. One thing to think about when you're developing Preds on a card like livestock is if your opponent just has 1 animal, then they'll just stop using livestock in the subsequent generation. And so usually it's not a priority to get Preds on the first generation. You'd rather get it on the second gen after they play it, because then you at least get 2 points off of it. I think it's very likely that we're going to see opponent take one of the O2 here. Standard in a greenery seems extremely expensive though, so presumably he has something better. Maybe Protected Valley. But Valley isn't that much better than a greenery, unless it's nitrogen-rich asteroid that he took over Mars U, which, if I were him, I wouldn't do. Nitrogen-rich asteroid right here is not phenomenal. The O2's capped. He hasn't seen birds, so he might just be playing it right into birds. whereas Mars U is a great scaling card for me that keeps me drawing cards, which I wasn't doing before. So here what I'm thinking about is, do I develop Preds, or do I think my opponent can take the last O2? That last O2 could be worth 2 points here. And it'd be really painful if our opponent gets it. Never playing Methane and never playing Power Grid here, so I have 2 cells. Open City leaves me 6 cash. If I convert for 4 cash back, I have 10 cash, so I can sell 2 cards and play Preds. Which locks in that final O2 point. Now, it might not feel like I'm getting that O2 point, because it's pretty likely that he can't afford it, but when you're in a situation like this, every last TR step is important. Our opponent has 4 plants here. There are lines that may allow him to pick up that last O2. We obviously don't want to get rid of our stall actions here, because stall actions will become increasingly important as the game goes on. But here it might be worth it just to lock in that O2 point. Obviously we're going to play Open City here, so getting it down also discounts it by 4 cash. I think it's a pretty logical play. Now we sell Methane Power Grid, play Preds. Thought about selling Lycan, it sounds like there. There's situations where I could use the power, but not that many. Okay, use the heat. This just increases our options to take the bonus if we find lava flows. Now Ants here is an instant pick. Obviously the other 3 cards are completely dead, so it's not hard, but Ants is exactly what we're looking for. Why? Because our ECF Regolith combo was about to run out of steam. And ECF for 1 plant is next to worthless, so we'd really like a microbe card to start loading ECF onto, and Ants is the perfect card for that. So now we'll have this great triple sequence, which is use Regolith, use Ants, use ECF. And we're not Antsing any points away from our Regolith, obviously. So Regolith is now dead. I think this is a slightly underappreciated combo. Ants, ECF, Regolith, or Ants, ECF, GHG if the heat goes first. These can end up scoring a lot of points, as you'll see here. Ocean, easy buy, we have Kelp. Imported GHG, again, relevant on Thermalist, relevant on potentially ending, and with the IC discount, it's pretty decent value. And so here, I'm probably thinking about, do I want to SP for the Ocean? And I think, again, I'd see a lot of people here who would take the heat bump, double SP for the Ocean bonus, because it seems like quite a lot of value. The challenge, again, as we've been talking about over the last couple gens, is our opponent's very close to ending. And if we bump heat and use SPs, yes, we flip the Ocean bonus. But our opponent then has very little incentive to use his heat, which can stretch the game even further. And the game is much closer to ending, and our opponent has 2 heat bumps. So after we do that, there's only 2 Oceans and 2 heat bumps left to end the game. At which point, if he has Lake Marineris and lava flows, we could just be in a lost position. The score is just simply too tight for us to do this, and so we just keep playing naturally here. Again, our biology here is scoring really well. this and CCF combo is scoring us a point and a half a gen. We have Preds, which is scoring 2 points a gen. Small animals, that's a half a point a gen, and we're about to develop birds here. Plus we have Ecozone that's scoring passively as we pick up more biology tags. So we have a lot of passive scoring here. Even though he has physics, we're doing all right. And as long as we don't really use our heat, this game is very expensive for our opponent to end, and he does not have a lot of cash. And this is also nice because it prevents our opponent from developing Deco, which is a nice passive score for him. Award's relatively tight here. Might see a banker fund from him, but it's by no means totally safe. CEO and physics, quite nice. And here we're gonna start seeing our opponent stall quite reasonably. He wants to either end or take the ocean bonus. So we're going to continue to work along the same lines that we've been talking, right? Game is close to ending. Nitrogen's not getting much better here, but in this position, we're going to need to keep our lead as wide as we can make it. And when he has 48 cash, is stalling, clearly eyeing the ocean bonus. He's very close to potentially ending. If he has a sequence of space events, he can score quite a lot of points. Just ending the game here, scores 7 TR on the heat track plus 3 oceans, so it's going to score 10 points. And 10 points is almost the entire gap between us. So we need to prevent him from being able to end, which means from now on out, we're going to have to play every point that we have as if the game's about to end this generation by our opponent. This also will make it awkward for our opponent because every time, every generation, he's going to have to decide whether to play space events. Let's say he has them. If he plays them, it makes it very easy for us to end the game, which he may not want since we're leading. But if he doesn't play these space events, then he's obviously losing a lot of value from them because they're very efficient cards. So again, make it awkward for your opponent. He does have a lot of cash here. The fact that he's stalling out probably means he wants to either take the heat bonus or take the ocean bonus with in between actions and doesn't want us to have the opportunity to take it out from under him with one SP asteroid, or he's going to develop plant production and wants to avoid getting burst, which he obviously hasn't seen. Actually, he did see, right? He passed us birds early in the game, if I remember. Yeah, I don't remember. But whether or not he's seen it, it's reasonable to play around if you're in his shoes. And again, another odd-looking play, Tropical Resort. Same reason, right? There's 20 points between us. He's got a lot of cash. We simply can't pass in a position where we haven't scored as many points as we can. And Tropical Resort doesn't kill a heat bump next generation. And here it doesn't kill a heat bump for Is it map 21? No, 2 generations. But in 2 generations, given us 6 cash as well, so. Not gonna play birds here. Much more valuable if we can hit his plants. His nitrogen-rich asteroid, which he took over Mars University, which I think it's a mistake. I just don't think that nitrogen-rich asteroids providing a lot of value here with the O2 maxed. So as expected, the opponent takes the passive heat to get the ocean bonus, fearing that we'll get it otherwise. But this now makes it awkward for him again because now we are in a position where we can fund Thermalist, which means he's probably got to make a fund at 14 cash here. These points are just very efficient, and if we get Thermalist at 14, the lead could get insurmountable for him. Some decent cards here. Pets is very cheap points for him. That's double discounted by Earth Office Interactor. Should be at least a point here, so it's 5 for a point. It's the best card here. You may take mining rights for relevance on Landlord. It's at least a threat, which means we get standard tech back, which we can keep with Marzu. Especially since we might end up funding Thermalist. And if we do end up needing to end, we'll be playing at least a couple of standard projects. Equally, we're probably going to start standarding on the board here as we run out of cards. Red Chem, decently efficient points. Is there 1 remaining power? We're sending Power Consortium back to him, and he can play it, which he could keep since he knows that past this Radchem, but it's very expensive aid just to stop us from playing Radchem, so I doubt he'll do that. So I think we're pretty safe to keep Radchem here. Probably just doing a little math here as to whether I can do something like fund Thermalist at 14 and SP to the end of the game, which is probably enough. On the flip side, we still have pretty good plays in our hand. And I think skipping efficient point cards here is probably a mistake. A suite of 7 actions here on our end. Again, we actually stretch pretty far into these generations. It's an easy buy. With Marzu, it's completely free access to 4 cards here. It's very good this late in the game. Asteroid's nice. You can get rid of it after Lycan. Urbanize could have been nice if he had more power, but not playable right now. And getting his 3 plants makes quite a bit of sense. It's very cheap. Doesn't use our heat. He has an activated physics complex, so I'll wait on funding Thermalist until that happens. He doesn't really have a very good fund, anyways. I was thinking about develop Radchem here, just in case he took Power Consortium. There's physics, so Thermalist is mine if I want it. Only lead by 6 points, so does not look safe to end here. Security fleet, have no titanium targets. That is another fine play. And having seen so many cards, our opponent's going to have a lot of efficient ways to score left in his hand. Probably has ICS and Convoy, which we haven't seen yet. And so we have to keep it being expensive for him to end. There's ICS. Again, lead by 3 points. If the opponent wants to play his efficient points, then he won't be able to end, so we don't take the heat. We are ourselves looking for an opportunity to end if he gets low in cash here, but very unlikely to happen. And he has more stalls than us, so we're probably just going to have to keep playing naturally. If we go another gen, which looks likely here. We again need to maximize our score. The most we can score here is Thermalist. In addition, he'll be last to act with perfect information in Gen 12, so we can't let him have the 20 funds, which will be the most efficient source of remaining points. So we are kind of forced to take Thermalist here. Well, not forced necessarily. We can go two paths here. We can end and pray that he can't make up the points. With the 20 fund. Or we can just go another gen. And I like to go another gen here. I think both plays have merit, but with my suite of passive scoring here, I like my chances going one more gen. Have more passive points. And so I think could have thought about ending there, but now that he has Archives 58 cash, there's still a lot of ways for him to come back here. Unfortunately, he didn't use livestock, which makes sense. So we're eating our own small animal. We would have preferred to eat off of Ecozone since it's not guaranteed to complete here. Unlike small animals, which next gen will definitely be a point. But we don't have much choice. Gotta keep the gap in scoring wide. Yeah, as expected, he scored quite a few points here. I think if he had gone for ends, it would have been very tight. These lava flows, Lagrange, which will be 2 cards and a point for us, and a science tag. Flows isn't that much cheaper for us than 2 SP asteroids, so makes sense to go Lagrange. Zeppelins makes Banker pretty dicey for him. With Zeppelins in our hand, we can again play as though this goes another generation. Then it could end up getting awkward for him to defend Banker. Zeppelins is a keep in case this stretches another gen. We've seen urbanized here, so it's just commercial district that can really annoy us. Opponent plays flows, which makes sense. We need to wait for him to use physics before we can safely take a heat pump, so we're not going to do that. Draw a card. Now just walk through our actions. Since he used large convoy last gen, livestock's full of animals for us to eat. Unfortunate that he has commercial district there. Also good for his banker defense. Ecosystems, phenomenal find. Completing a 7-point ants there, which we paid 10 cash for. Just highlighting the power of 6 after he plays farming here, but nope, 7 again after greenhouses. Highlighting the power of this ants ECF regolith combination. It's not that rare to end up with this combo because ants is usually not a card that people spend high draft picks on. I think our best line here is SB City and heat pump. But our opponent needs to get cash to end the game, which he presumably will do, so we can wait just a second on that. It's a 3-point city deceptively because he has no conversion spots next to his city, other than that one. In addition, he has to end the game given this clock, so he will just end up giving this point to me to get the cash. And now we can just end with the heat bump. Heat bump zeppelins. Next gen, if we had gone another, zeppelins would be very annoying on banker, so. And that's all of this one. $118,109. And I think gives a good modeling of the end game, the kind of counterplay against your opponent, managing game ends, keeping an eye on what your opponent can do, and ending up with a win with where we were mid-game is a very weak hand. We scored 40 VP here, which I think if you looked at our hands in the early game would be pretty surprising, and that just speaks, I think, to the power of the CCF regolith plus all of our biology stacking up with Ecozone, Preds, Birds. It just starts to add up to a lot of points. Yeah, I mean, opponent talks about plundering Planner, which obviously cost him some points, but actually I don't think that many on a 12 gen game. Often milestones don't matter that much. Of course, he could have gotten Planner if he had tried. But hopefully it was instructive. Hope you learned something. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I'll be back with more. Thanks.